Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
You are listening to The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak, connecting the reality of the gospel to the grit of life. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/Noah Filipiak or at noahfilipiak.com/give.
What is up? Welcome to episode 53 of the Flip Side podcast. Today is going to be a little bit shorter of a show, which you may have noticed when you saw the time on this most uploaded episode. So, I mentioned the last couple episodes that I am planting a church in urban Grand Rapids, Michigan, and our grand opening is going to be in April, Easter Sunday of 2021, and so things have been fast and furious, and doing lots of big, fulfilling things that are really important for the church plant. And so I do apologize for the slight delay in getting another podcast episode out, and that is also the reason for a bit shorter of an episode today. But I wanted to get a new episode out because this is a big week. I'm not exactly sure what day this episode will get posted, but this week is the week that my book, Beyond the Battle, A Man's Guide to His Identity in Christ in an Over-Sexualized World, comes out. It comes out on August the 10th, which is this Tuesday. This is a long awaited day. In some respects, it's been 9 years. I wrote this original manuscript back in 2012. I've talked at length before about the journey, but Indie published in 2018, now publishing an updated, revised, expanded, a better edition with Zondervan, coming out this Tuesday, August 10th. And so, yeah, if you haven't ordered the book and you like the podcast, you listen to the podcast, I would really love it, appreciate it, recommend it if you picked up a copy of the book. If you're a guy, I think it's really going to help you in your journey of freedom, your freedom against discontentment when it comes to your singleness, when it comes to your marriage, when it comes to sexual temptation. And if you are a woman, pick it up for a guy in your life. Pick it up for your son, pick it up for your husband, pick it up for a friend. That would be great. And if you have a copy, if you've already read the book, or when you read the book, another thing that's really helpful is if you can leave a review on Amazon or on Goodreads and or wherever you purchase the book, if you purchase the book online. So, big week, exciting week. As always, the Flip Side is brought to you by Angry Brew Coffee. You can pick up a bag of Angry Brew, use the promo code FLIP, and you'll get 10% off your order at angrybrew.com. That is coffee with a punch. It has twice the caffeine of normal coffee. You can also get 10% off of 5 Lakes Chris's Blend. So big shout out. Thank you to 5 Lakes and Angry Brew for sponsoring the podcast. With church planting, I am fundraising for my salary. We are planting a multicultural church with the Evangelical Covenant denomination. I am also fundraising for a multicultural staff. And so I'll be telling you a little bit more about details of this, but I am starting fundraising. So for real fundraising, we do Patreon on the show. If you would like to contribute a small amount per month, patreon.com/Noah Filipiak is the way to go. If you want to join my actual fundraising team for the church plant, you can shoot me an email, and I'll have details soon posted everywhere online. Those details are not posted yet, but we do have the set up, ready to go. So feel free to email the show, podcast@beyondthebattle.net. I know some of you have been very supportive of me and my ministry in the past, and so just want to make that available to you. And feel free to email about anything else at all. A couple things before we jump in. This is a short episode. I'm kind of breaking format here. We are going to do some shenanigans at the end with Noah's rant, and trying to keep that format of talking about more substantive things, more serious things at the beginning of the episode, and saving the ridiculousness for the end of the episode for those that would like to skip it. But yeah, so a couple things. Just want to talk about sort of on the content side, on the front end. One, I've been listening. Actually, I finished this 6-episode podcast from Christianity Today that just came out called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. Talking about Mars Hill, Seattle, and Mark Driscoll. And I highly recommend you listening to that. I will not be offended as the host of The Flip Side that you would actually listen to other podcasts outside of The Flip Side as well. It is okay. You do have my permission. So when I first heard about this fall of the rise and fall of Mars Hill, I honestly thought, and maybe this is what you might be thinking, isn't that sort of gossipy? Why are we talking about Mark Driscoll and the rise and fall and all these sorts of things? And I tell you what I really like about it's 6 episodes. It really listens like an NPR show. Whether you like or don't like NPR, that's not my point. But they have a nice format. It's very professional. It's very listenable, and it feels that way as you listen. And it's an investigative journalism piece on the rise and fall of Mark Driscoll and Mars Hill, and I won't give you all the details here because you can subscribe and listen. But what I really like about it's not just kind of beating up on Mark Driscoll. It really is talking about macro level problems in the church, the Big C church, and it's stuff we've talked about before on The Flip Side. It's stuff I've been transparent with you about my own struggles, and speaking of a book coming out on this Tuesday, and just the roller coaster rides, the ups and downs of that whole world. And I have no delusions of grandeur about this book, but I have in the past. I've had those delusions of grandeur before. I think the first time I planted a church, I was 22 years old. When I started the pre-launch or the launch phase, I was 23 when we launched, and my delusions of grandeur were for Jesus. I wanted, X amount of people, thousands of people to come to know Jesus because it's Jesus. Why wouldn't we want God to do this amazing thing? And, God, so there was a pastor that we shared a building with, we rented from, and he was an older pastor, not old, just older than me, which wasn't hard to do because I was almost a teenager. But he said he was going to, let us use their building, and he was also praying that we would not be successful. And it was kind of tongue-in-cheek and kind of serious. And he honestly said he had planted a church when he was 22, and he thinks one of the worst things for a very, very young pastor who is success, particularly when you're starting something yourself, and just the stuff that it does to your ego and the way you put your identity in those things. And man, Christianity Today in this podcast, They really put a spotlight on that. Not just on Mark Driscoll, like I said, it was on the church. It was why do we as the church, why are we attracted to this Christian celebrityism? And I think those are important questions we need to ask ourselves. Why are we attracted to narcissistic leaders? Why do we reward narcissism often? in the church when it comes to authors and speakers and pastors. And it doesn't mean if you're an author, speaker, pastor of a big church, does not mean you're a narcissist, does not mean you're going to have a big fall someday. But I will say, I think it's true that this environment that we create, if it were a greenhouse, you can build a greenhouse and a natural environment of something is going to produce certain things. And I think we've done that in the church. And I think we have to be really intentional to curb those sinful things from growing. And it's not a matter of, oh, yeah, I'm strong enough. That won't happen to me. I'd never be a narcissist. I'd never have an affair. I'd never be an abusive leader. I'd never be that bullying leader. I would never believe the press clippings about myself. I'd never be an egomaniac. Yeah, you would. Yeah, you would. Yeah, you would. Because you're human and I'm human. And when you set up humans in certain sociological environments, humans do what humans do. And it doesn't mean you do it intentionally. It doesn't mean you may even do it maliciously. But those sorts of things, it's almost like childhood actors. There's not many success stories of childhood actors or actresses that didn't have big-time issues later in life because of the attention that was put on them when they were 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And it's probably not a bad analogy for some of this stuff. And so anyway, rise and fall of Mars Hill, and that is a topic that I bring up here on the flip side because I struggle with it myself, and I need accountability on it. And it's just something we need to talk about more in the church because we foolishly act like, oh, it's not a problem because those are the most spiritual people. They would never struggle with that, so we don't need to worry about them. And then you have all these people falling. Ravi Zacharias, Bill Hybels, Mark Driscoll, Carl Lentz, go down the line, Tullian Shavijan, Darren Patrick, and you kind of go, wow, maybe there is a and I'm not throwing those guys under the bus. I have grace for them, but here's the thing. When it comes to abuse, we have to identify abuse. When I say I have grace for them, I don't mean I excuse the stuff that they did as leaders. I mean, I would counsel with them. I would be their friend. I would try to love them. But abuse has to be held accountable, and for it to stop, for the pattern of abuse to stop, we have to actually identify it and be real about it. And you saw a lot of that with the Me Too movement, which transitioned right into the Church Too movement because people in the church were saying, I was abused within the church, by the church. And so if we have this stance of it's gossip to talk about those instances because we want to protect the abuser, well, then it just allows abuse to continue in other places, and it allows abuse to continue in their own lives. And that's anyway. So those are things that I appreciate about the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, is it's intended to make the church a healthier place, right? It's intended to identify these massive illnesses within the church, this disease that's just riddling the church. And for us, and it points a finger at us, the listener, and it kind of says, hey, we've created a demand for this. And so check it out. It's very good. You may have already heard of it. I've had several friends already talk to me about it, and it's good. Good conversation, good stuff that we should be talking about. One other resource I just want to pass along to you. I just finished the book, The Great Sex Rescue. It's written by 3 women. I will probably mispronounce all of their names, and I do apologize. I have not heard their names audibly, but I just finished the book. So Joanna Sawatsky, Rebecca Gregoire, or Gregory, I'm sorry, I'm not sure, Lindenbach, and Sheila Wray. Gregory, let's go with Gregory. I know Rebecca is Sheila's daughter. And they co-wrote this book. It's 3 women that wrote a book about sex, and I read it. So I lead, beyondthebattle.net groups, and always inviting guys into those. Those are groups of guys, and we go through my book, Beyond the Battle, and there's 7-week groups online, and then after that we do accountability together, and reviewing the content of the truths of the books. We do that indefinitely. I do that indefinitely. I need that in my life. That's on Saturday mornings. And one of the guys in my alumni group, he told me about this book. He said his wife read it, and then she wanted him to read it, and he's reading it, and he said it's really helpful. He described it as the women's perspective of my book of Beyond the Battle, and I was like, wow, that sounds something like something I should read. And my wife and I are 17 years into marriage. I'm relatively transparent about our ups and downs as well, and we're still working hard on our marriage, and so read the book and really, really liked it. So I just want to recommend it. I don't talk a ton about books on here outside of people that I interview, authors that I interview. And I tried to, I should say I made an effort to reach out to the authors of this book, and we'll continue to do that. What I liked about it was a couple things. So if you like Beyond the Battle, some of you hopefully do. If you're listening here, you've read Beyond the Battle and liked it. If you're a guy that's read Beyond the Battle, I would pick up a copy of The Great Sex Rescue, and I would read it as a guy. It's primarily written to women. They survey, I think, around 2,000 women or so, Christian married women, about their sex lives. And it's a lot of hard truths about the struggles in women's sex lives. And then it talks about the messages where they got the places that they got certain messages that have had very negative effects on their sex lives. And primarily it's from best-selling Christian books about sex. And Beyond the Battle, I do critique a number of very well-known books. And so I always feel a little bad about that. I feel bad, if I met those authors. I know they're good people, and I critiqued your book pretty strong in my book. Well, The Great Sex Rescue, they critique all of those books much with much more ferocity, much fiercer than I do in mine. But they critique these books, and they show where these negative messages about sex that women have internalized have come from, and then show a healing path out. And honestly, you're never going to match up on everything with everybody, but there's a lot of good match between Beyond the Battle and The Great Sex Rescue. And so I just like it. I'm going to recommend it a lot to guys to read, to go, and here's what your wife's going through. Potentially, right? A lot of it's and then for women, for you to read it, if you're having struggles in your sex life, particularly if your husband is a guy that's struggled with pornography and other sexual sin issues, and so you've been exposed to kind of those messages in the evangelical world about sex. I won't get into it a ton more here, but just to say, I encourage you to check it out. I encourage you to check it out. And if you've read the book and want to write in to me, to the podcast, and let me know what you think about it, we can kind of interact, do a little running book review together. That'd be great. Podcast at beyondthebattle.net. But I think it's a book that'll help a lot of married couples heal. It's a book you can read with your spouse, because it's primarily written to women. So wives, you could read it, or women, if you're not married, I think it'd be a great read as well. But then husbands, it's giving you a really great women's perspective on sex, and you need to hear that, and it's really, really good and really helpful. And there's even some overlap between The Great Sex Rescue and The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. There's quotes about some of the things Mark Driscoll said about sex. Holy cow. I mean, I'm telling you, if it is scary when you listen to the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, when you listen to the podcast, it is shocking. It is absolutely shocking, the stuff that Mark Driscoll said in sermons and publicly. It is absolutely shocking. I don't know any other word for it. It is absolutely, some of it absolutely nauseating. Some of it is just infuriating. It is shocking. It is wild and crazy. And the fifth episode is all about sex. It's all about women and sex and the things specifically Driscoll said about women and sex. And then it talks about some of the more macro level issues. But the Great Sex Rescue also quotes Driscoll, and it's shocking. It's stuff I don't even want to talk about it in the podcast. It's not comfortable at all. But it's abusive stuff. It's abusive. It's just downright abusive. So there's some overlap there where the Great Sex Rescue does talk about some of the Me Too, cases in the church, and Rachel Denholler, and again, I might be saying her name wrong as well. I apologize. She's quoted in the Great Sex Rescue several times, and she's also interviewed on. She was the first woman to report regarding Larry Nassar, the USA Gymnastics doctor who was from Michigan State, East Lansing, where I lived for 15 years while all that was going on, which is wild. But yeah, so they quote Rachel in the book, and she's also interviewed in the podcast. So some overlap there regarding abuse. So yeah, check those resources out. I recommend it. It is actually funny, as I was reading The Great Sex Rescue, I've obviously read their book after my book was completely finished and edited and, in print. And where I read it beforehand, I would have cited several things from it. I would have quoted several things from it. There's some really, really, really good nuggets in there. But also, I was I was really glad as I read their book. I kind of was going, man, I'm glad we agree on that and on this and on that, because I would hate. It's weird and crazy that my book's not just some Flipside podcast episode. It's actually going to be out there in the book world, Zondervan, all this stuff. And if they got their hands on it, I would hate to be included in the second edition of all the things that I said that were, bad and hurtful and harmful. And I don't think I did. I think I was really, I think we're on the same page. I think I say that jokingly about myself, but I was encouraged going, okay, good. I hadn't read this yet, and I wrote some of this stuff, and so I'm glad we're kind of saying the same things, which is good. And I'm glad that hopefully I won't get myself in trouble down the road. So yeah, check those out. What I want to talk about just for a few minutes, and like I said, this whole episode is going to be a lot shorter than usual, than you're used to. And I titled the episode "There's Always More." And I just am led to share just some cool stuff God has done and showed me and spoken to me over the last couple months. Sometimes I go through droughts, where I just like, God, are you there? Are you speaking? Are you real? And maybe you go through droughts like that too. And so I think when God is speaking and in powerful, tangible ways, I think it's important that we share those. I think it's important that we talk to each other about those to just remind each other, oh yeah, he's speaking. It's in his timing, and so I just want to give you a little bit of that from me from the last few months. So it was very beginning of June. I went on a really, really, really fantastic men's retreat, and I went on a men's retreat. And the men's retreat had a lot of stuff about identity and a lot of stuff about our wound, the wound that we carry around, kind of who wounded us in our past, and then how that wound, and the wound really has to do with our identity. It has to do with, do I consider myself lovable, and who am I? Am I, and Beyond the Battle talks a fair amount about that sort of thing, where we men, as far as the context of the book, but women certainly too, men and women, hey, we're on the flip side. Let's talk to everybody, right? Men and women, single, married, we're looking to sex, we're looking to marriage, we're looking to that boyfriend or girlfriend, we're looking to, if you're acting out sexually, pornography, lust, fantasy, strip club, whatever, right? You're getting a hit. Like you're trying to get a hit like a drug. And that hit, it's sure, it's an endorphin rush. Sure, there's a physical orgasm, whatever it might be. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you want another person to tell you you are valuable, to tell you you are loved, to tell you you are desirable. Even if it's fake, it's totally made up. It's totally you're paying money for it, or it's just this. It's completely fake. They're an actress or actor. They don't actually love you, but you can pretend, right? And that's all your mind needs to kind of get that hit. And so a lot of us, we're trying to get that hit out of a wound, from our past, and Beyond the Battle walks you through that of how to find that ultimate satisfaction in the love that Jesus already has for us. And I've done whole podcast episodes just about that. If you're interested, I'll try to, if I can, here in a moment, I'll try to give you the episode for that, because I've done a whole episode on that, and then I actually reposted. I did a podcast within a podcast because it was just one. I was like, we need to bring this back. Also, here I go. Now I'm getting on my rabbit trail. I'm saying like more. That was one of my Noah's rants. Oh, it is so hard not to say like. And when other people say like, I notice it is I don't know if pet peeve is the right word. Oh, we got to stop saying like, because I say like, because I hear other people say like. Okay, so episode 44, if you want to listen more about some of my insecurity stuff, check out episode 44 of The Flip Side. And then the one that is a podcast within a podcast was episode 25 of The Flip Side. But back to, there's always more, back to this retreat. So we're just a lot of really good stuff, a lot of really helpful stuff, and it's that retreat was a lot in June of this year, a lot of solo time with God. So a lot of time with God out in the woods, and I'm reading Genesis 1, 2, and 3, Adam and Eve, the fall, and in Genesis 3, Satan, he's talking to Adam and Eve, and he says, "Hey, God has given you all this stuff." And he says, but there's more. These aren't direct. This is not a direct quote. I'm paraphrasing, but the paraphrase is kind of the wording that God gave me during that, where what Satan was saying to Adam and Eve was, there's more. There's always more. That's the title of this episode. He's saying there's more. Sure, God created you. Sure, God loves you. Sure, he gave you this garden, but there's more. There's more. You could be like God. God is actually trying to hide things from you. There's more. And so, the eating of the fruit, it wasn't just, oh, that fruit, naughty, naughty, naughty. No, it was this desire for more. It was this desire for there's something else out there that will give me, again, validation, acceptance, approval, desire. There's something out there, and there's always more. So then in that retreat, going to my wound and looking at, my history with pornography, and then history with struggling, with contentment within my marriage, because let's face it, there's always more, right? There's always more women. There's always more men. There's always more sex. There's always more. You might not be looking at porn at all. You might not be cheating on your spouse at all. You might be single, and you might be celibate and saving sex for marriage. But there's always more. There's always more hits of that endorphin rush hit that you can get as a married person off of flirting with somebody or getting attention from someone of the opposite sex or someone that you're attracted to. There's always more. It never ends. I mean, and so there's always more pornography. There's always more women. There's always more men. There's always more. There's always more. And it was just this interesting connection with what Satan was saying to Adam and Eve. And obviously, when you look at it from a third party, from an objective stance, you go, look, you'll never be satisfied. You are addicted. That's the nature of addiction. If you have a family member who's an alcoholic or a family member who's addicted to drugs, you can look at them from the outside and say, wake up. There's always more alcohol. There's always more drugs. You're going to get high, and then you're just going to have to do it again. So stop the cycle that you're in. But when you're the one in the cycle, whether you're the person abusing the substance or you're the person that's addicted to attention, addicted to wanting to be attractive, wanting that validation. When you're in it, you believe the lie that there's this thing that's more. You just must have it, and when you have it, you'll finally have the thing that you are wanting and looking for. So this was back in June. Fast forward to, that was early June. Fast forward to the middle of July. And in the middle of July, which was just a few weeks ago, I went to Colorado. It wasn't a full-fledged, vacation where I was just getting time to do a ton of hiking. My wife was taking a class for 2 weeks. I went out there for about 5 days of that, spent a lot of the time with her, and I had to pick her up from class at 5:00 and whatnot. So I had some time restrictions. But anyway, my point is, one, I fell in love with the Rocky Mountains. Never been there before. Absolutely fell in love. Absolutely going back. I had one full day to myself where I could go out on an adventure. And I started my day at a place called St. Mary's Glacier. And I think the closest town, what's it called? Idaho Falls was the closest town. So it's not up in the national park, but it's in the mountains. And I'm hiking, and so it's kind of a popular little spot where people go. If you hike over to the right, you end up at this beautiful glacier lake, this mountain glacier lake, and then there's a trail of snow that you can kind of walk next to, and just gorgeous. I'd never been there before, and I just figured the point of hiking was a mountain was to get to the top of the mountain, right? And so my only thought was just to keep going up. This was not in a state park or national park. There were no markers on the trail. It was just a bunch of boulders, sort of a kind of a path, but there was 100 different paths. And so if you stayed to the right, you kind of followed the crowd-ish, and you ended up at the lake. Well, I stayed on the left, and I just kept going up. And I didn't really even notice that there weren't that many people around me, and then there weren't any people around me. I just saw the top of this mountain and went, that's where I'm going. I'm going to the top of this mountain, because that's what you do when you climb a mountain. Right? You hike a mountain, you're supposed to get to the top. So I'm going to the top. And it's incredible. I mean, I'm going to the top of the mountain, and I'm able to stop as I go and look out over the lake. So the lake where everyone else had kind of walked to not really swim in. It's cold and whatnot, but some people were. But that lake, I was way above it. I was looking out over it. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. And so I just kept going up. And I get to the top of the mountain. There's nobody around. And I'm at the very top. And as I look around, I am completely surrounded by mountains. And I can tell you, because I've never been to the mountains before, and I've never, ever experienced anything like this. And as I'm looking around at just an infinite amount of mountains around me, I very clearly experienced God speaking to me that there's more, and there's always more. And I remembered everything I just told you about the men's retreat and the Adam and Eve and the sin side of there's always more. And as I looked around at the Rocky Mountains, I realized there is an infinite amount of nature. There's an infinite amount of paths you could hike. There's an infinite amount of wildlife to see. There's these Rocky Mountains you could climb your whole life and hike, and you'd never run out of space. You could you'd never run out of trails. And this is just one little part of the country and one little part of the world. If you looked at the global scale of God's creation, there's literally always more. And I'm just becoming overwhelmed by this feeling. And then God really, really tells me and shows me, allows me to experience, maybe that's the best way to phrase it, that there's also always more of his love for me. There's always more of his love for me. And as I experienced the grandeur of these mountains all around me, I felt like I was in heaven. If you've read the Chronicles of Narnia, towards the very end of the story, they end up in heaven. And there's this line, it's, obviously Lewis's Narnia version of heaven. And there's this line where Aslan, the Jesus character, keeps saying, further up and further in. And it comes back later, further up and further in. And I felt that on the top of that mountain. I felt further up and further in. I felt like this is what heaven will be like. And I felt like I was in heaven. And I felt like the fall of man, the fall of creation that happened in Genesis 3, that brought all the brokenness that we experience in life, it hadn't touched the mountains as much as it had, say, the city. There wasn't the same effect with no other people around me on the top of that beautiful mountain. And I experienced God telling me there's always more of my love for you. There's always more of me. The infinite that you feel right now on this mountain, you're feeling my infinite nature. You're feeling the infinite nature of my love for you, Noah, my son. There's always more. You'll never tire of hiking these mountains because there's always more. You can keep coming back every single year. And it will and it's the same with my love. My love for you as my son, this thing that Adam and Eve was looking for. This thing, as you look back at your wound, you've always been looking for from women. And you've always been looking for from relationships and from sex. I'm the one to give it to you. And there's always more of it. It never runs out. I never run out. My love for you never runs out. There's always more. And flip side listeners, I just want to share that with you because it was I was crying. I was worshiping. I was just overwhelmed with God's love for me. It was one of those moments in life I will never forget. Those moments where it feels like Holy Spirit just breaks through the veil and you really can experience, and I hope you've been able to experience God's love in that way. And I frankly, like in the Old Testament, they build an altar because they forget stuff. I forget stuff too. I go back and Satan's deceptions are there, and maybe you made that up, maybe this, maybe that, and back to there's always more. You can have more of this, more of that. And let me add this too, back to some of the things I was talking about with the rise and fall of Mars Hill and my own struggles, the same craving of there's always more that exists for women and for sex and for that attention. It's the same craving when you go and you get involved in writing books and in podcasting and blogging. There's always more blog statistics that you need. There's always more podcast downloads that you need. There's always more book sales that you need. There's always more attention that you need. There's always more people that need to know about you and hear about you. There's always more success that you need to have. Why? It's the same craving. It's the same craving for, am I valuable? Am I desirable? Am I loved? And as a church planter, I experienced the same thing in 2006 when I launched Crossroads Church in Lansing. I had delusions of grandeur. I thought the church would be massive, and it was tiny. It was my pastor friend that prayed for us that we would not have success, God answered his prayer. We were tiny, and we stayed tiny for a very, very long time, and we never were large. We eventually, 7 years in, got to the point of sustainability, but for the first 5 years, we were under 50 people. For the first 2 years, we were under 30 people. And it's the same craving for there's always more. We need more people. We need more salvations and baptisms. We need more butts in the seats. We need more success. It's this, and so I am wired for that. I think most all of us in different ways are wired for that. And here, God is just pouring out his love onto me and onto you, saying, there's always more of me, of my love. That craving you have for more, I'm the only one that can fulfill it. And I love this picture of further up and further in. It never ends. We never have to stop with God. We can keep going deeper and deeper and deeper on this adventure with him on this earth and well on into eternity, experiencing his love for us and allowing it to overflow from our lives into the lives of the people in this world around us, showing them that there's always more of God's love for them as well. So that's what I want to share with you today on the podcast. There's always more, and I hope that this helps you experience that with Jesus. And just a word before I wrap this up. Don't feel like you have to have that mountaintop experience. That those are rare, and it might come later, it might never come. We don't need that mountaintop experience to validate the love that Jesus has for us. The love is there. The tomb is empty. Jesus died on the cross for our sins. The tomb is empty. The Holy Spirit is with us. When the Father looks at you, if you have your faith in Jesus, Colossians 1:22 tells us he sees us as holy, without blemish, free from accusation. We can remind ourselves of these truths, and the reminders, frankly, are monotonous at times. It's a daily time with Jesus reminder. It's a weekly time in church reminder and in Christian community reminder. And there are unique moments where God breaks through and reminds us of that love in a real, in a tangible way that we can remember. But look, if you haven't experienced that or haven't recently, don't beat yourself up for it or hold that against God. Maybe even just my story. You can go, yeah, man, there is always more of God. And I want you to be able to pause just for a moment and enjoy that, to experience that, to enjoy that, to meditate on that, and really to ask yourself, where else can you find that? Where else? What are you chasing right now? What are you striving for? And there's always more. There's always more to strive for. Is it pornography? Is it men? Is it women? Is it, if you're single, is it marriage? If you're married, is it some other man or some other woman or some change that needs to happen, some circumstance? There's always more. There's always something else. Is it some kind of success in your job or whatever it is? Is it some of the stuff that I shared in my journey? And just take that to Jesus and to take your appetite to him and allow him to be the always more and to experience that love in a real, in a tangible way. All right. Wow. Well. That sound is the new sound, the new warning bell to tell you that everything from this point on in the podcast is utter ridiculousness. So the content is over. We're trying this new format. So those of you who are mature, those of you who are responsible, those of you that are sensible, those of you that desire deep, meaningful spiritual growth, you can stop listening at this point. You don't have to endure the ridiculousness that will follow. But if you do continue to listen, you must remember now you have been warned, and you've heard the alarm. Noah's rant is coming, and if you continue listening, you cannot blame me. You cannot write to me and say that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why is that on a podcast? Why is a pastor saying this stuff? It's not funny. You know what? You've been warned. You really, really need to turn the podcast off right now. Because next is the one, the only, sponsored by Angry Brew. We are enabled. We are corporately enabled. Noah's Rant.
Noah's Rant.
All right. I'm not exactly sure if this is a rant or not. We'll see if it turns into a actual rant or not. But I want to I just need a therapy session. I just need to get this off my chest. So, we're getting carpet in at our house. I hate spending money on anything, first of all, period. But on house repairs, or house modifications, house improvements. I mean, most things. It's like, hey, let's paint those walls. Why? I mean, are you just bored that you are looking for work to do? Do you don't like relaxing? Do you not like just enjoying peace and recreation? Because when I look at those walls, they're doing a pretty good job. I think the purpose of a wall is to keep a floor, to keep a ceiling off of a floor. It's to separate a ceiling from a floor, because you don't want your ceiling and floor touching. That wouldn't be a very good house. So the wall is there. This is a really great purpose. Two purposes, really. One is to keep the ceiling from touching the floor, and the other one is off your head, and that's very handy. The other one is to separate two rooms, so you could have two different bedrooms, or maybe a bathroom in a bedroom. It's very handy, very handy. But then what's really bothersome is we look at the wall and we say it's not enough to have the wall. The wall has to have, let's paint a different color, and then let's spend more money and buy things to hang up on the wall, as if hanging something on a wall somehow helps it keep the floor off the ceiling. And separate two rooms, which is its function in life. And so, as you can tell, I have problems in my marriage. I told you before, because still working on my wife to see things this way, just to understand the truth, to see the light of what a wall actually exists for. We put mulch out every spring. Why in the world are we putting mulch out every spring? First of all, what's the purpose of mulch in the first place? It's just wood chips. You just put it. You don't like the grass there, or you just put wood chips. Fine. But the thing is, it's not enough to put mulch out once and be done with it. The next year comes, and the mulch from the last year is still there. It's still very wood chippy. But you have to put another round of mulch out. It's because you got 3 neighbors, and you've got to really impress your neighbors. They see the new mulch and they go, whoa. Philippiacs, their mulch is really red. Whoa. I mean, they got it going on over there. Man, they're doing something right. They talk about success in life and neighbor envy. Red mulch. Whoa. I mean, that old faded stuff. Oh, man, if you You see that faded brown mulch from last year, neighbors start to worry about you a little bit. They start to wonder if you're feeding your children. They start to wonder what's going on in that house over there when you don't have fresh red mulch to show off to your neighbors every single spring. So we're getting new carpet in the house. And look, carpet, it's cool, right? But we had carpet already. And now we're getting new carpet. And yeah, look, let me say this. Our carpet was nasty. Let me just give my wife some credit here. Not on the walls, not on the mulch, but we'll give some credit where credit's due. When we bought our house, in the listing, it said new carpet. Well, the previous owners put in the carpet themselves. I could do a whole rant about that. Thanks a lot, previous owners. You liars. Yeah, new carpet put in by you. You have no idea what you're doing. It would be like if I'm trying to think, I have no, if I came and repaired your car, you could say, car newly repaired. It wouldn't run. It would probably blow up because I fixed it, but you could write in an ad, newly repaired. New carpet. They put it in themselves. It's coming up all over the house. So, the seam goes under. There's a seam. You got like a wood floor and a carpet, and the seam goes under the wood. Well, all that's coming up. The carpet just flapping around like a flag, flapping in the breeze. Our cats love it. They love to play under it. There's big wrinkles in it. When you go up the stairs, the staples or the tack strip that's beneath, they didn't put padding down or something. I'm no carpet guru, but I know that when you walk on carpet, you are not supposed to be able to feel the tack strips, the staples coming up from the carpet. My children, when they walk on the stairs going up in bare feet, they got puncture wounds and blood. Like, Dad, I went upstairs and now I'm all bloody. Like, oh, wear sandals next time. We're not getting new carpet. So we finally broke down. We had to get new carpet because the previous owners lied to us to get us to buy the house. And so, putting in new carpet is awful because we have stuff in our house. We live here. It is a house. Whoever decided to put carpet into houses where people actually live. It's worse than moving. We had to move all of our kids' beds, dressers, all this junk into our bedroom. We're getting half the house carpeted and then the other house carpeted, the other half carpeted the next week because where are you going to put all of your stuff? So my bedroom has my daughter's dresser in it, my daughter's bookshelf in it. My daughter has this loft bed thing. That whole thing is in my bed. I can't even get into my bed. I cannot get from my bed to my dresser. And so we finally got the half of the carpet in the house, and then we spent today putting all the stuff back into my daughter's room. So this is a dual Noah's rant. One, it is three. Actually, it's trifold. One, I just need to whine and complain. Can you tell? Can you tell that that's really the purpose of Noah's rant to begin with? It's good for my marriage because I can, you just got to get a few things off your chest to, confidential confidant. HIPAA, is that the counselor thing when you're not allowed to share information? I appreciate that with the flip side listeners. We have that agreement. So beyond that, house renovations. Let's be honest. Can we stop painting walls? Can we stop decorating walls? Can we give that money to missions? I had this friend once and he goes, nobody should have pets. We need to give that money to missions. So that's kind of a joke in my life. So this is where you give those jokes. So it's, quote, the flip side. Don't paint your walls. Don't put stuff on your walls. Give that money to missions. Actually, I'd rather just sit around, frankly, reading a book or sleeping or eating than getting up and painting walls. So if we could stop that, if we could stop putting new mulch out every year, that would be great. That would be fantastic. Instead of putting out new mulch, you could be a Patreon supporter of The Flip Side. See what I just did there? See that? I'm not sure where this rant's going. But the other one is to the previous owners of my house. I know you listen to The Flip Side. I appreciate that. You did not do us a solid. You did not. And so the next time you put carpet in at your house, right before you move, pay someone. Pay someone else to put in the carpet. A professional carpet installer. And if you do decide you're gonna be, Tim Allen and put in the carpet yourself again, like an all-star, put a little padding down on the stairs so that the children of the next home do not have impaled themselves on puncture wounds going up the stairs. So there you have it. As you know, the Noah's Rant exists to make the world a better place, and I feel we did that. I feel better. And I'm a person. I matter, right? I make the world a better place for myself and for the next person that buys the house of those people. So hey, thanks for listening to episode 53 of The Flip Side. Pick up a copy of Beyond the Battle. If you could leave a review, that would be awesome. I will see you next time on The Flip Side.
The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak is a South Francis Press production. Copyright Noah Filipiak. www.noahfilipiak.com. Theme music by Kyle Lake at K-Lake Music. Used with permission. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or wherever podcasts are found.
Souls needing revivals, what I do? Influence like the cup full of that Bombay. Kelly's to them Tom Hanks, Lexus to them Andres. Hoping they check it, my inner reverence, stressing for leverage. That they see the king's tracks on the pavement leading to heaven. Yo, dripping in that gold that don't perish. People selling fake, see the green around their belly. Taking refuge in his hands, see his palms, my living quarters. Close them when I'm finished, then it's time to bring me closer. There's no purgatory, cause you're in or you're out. When you see him in the clouds, then you know it's going down. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is what your days. Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Tripping upon the premise, see lyrics painting the image, pointing to redemption to the one who got them splinters. Cause that cross is nothing pretty, so why the beauty pageants? And caught up in emotions and following your passions. Talking that freedom, our people need them more than that Easter. Or coffee shop discussions debating over baristas. Please sir, this is why we inked up. Even when they do the autopsy, they still see him. Freedom coming quickly. Bars from the spirit, put it through the preamp and mix it like a chemist. Put it in the airwaves and hoping that they hear it. If there's some confusion, then I hope you see him clearly. Raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is what your days is.